Hello, this is Solomon, and we have a guide video. Now, it's not a guide to a build order, it's just a guide. How do you use defenses? Or, like, what's the purpose of defenses? What is the goal of a defense that you're taking in your deck? Now, there's a lot to explain here. So, all defenses, and whenever you use them, they fall into two categories in how you're using them. Siege and defense. Now, what do those mean? Siege is basically whenever you are being aggressive for the defense. Now, most people just think ferret siege, but it can be ferret siege, fox siege, owl siege. It's whenever the army operates around a defense, the fortification. The fortifications are literally forward and aggressive. Generally, they get map control, but the army doesn't actually fight without the defense because the army's weaker. Like with a ferret siege, the ferrets are going to retreat back to the defenses. They're going to avoid a direct engagement. Same thing with Kasha. Like it retreats back to the sieges after sniping off some. Retreats back to the defense after sniping off pigs, army, etc. Owls, they basically let loose their mice into the enemy army base and run back to the defenses. It's a siege whenever you're operating around your defenses. Even something as simple like mines in a siege would be having ferrets early, putting mines down somewhere, and then baiting the enemy army into the mines when they go after your ferrets. That's using your mines as siege. So when you're using your fortifications for siege, your army does not fight without them. Until you get far enough ahead that you don't need to do then till the point that you're so far ahead from doing damage with harass and whatever that you can just fight. But before that point, you don't fight about your defenses. You always run back to them. Now, the other purpose of defenses is defense. But what does that mean? What's the actual purpose? And actually, awesome. Let me start the replay. Now, when you use defenses to defend, you're using them to accelerate your tempo. That is the goal of them. Now, what does that mean? We need to go over a couple of terms. Let's go over tempo and initiative. Now, these two terms are very closely related, and tempo has several very close meanings, so I need to talk about which one I'm talking about. Since you're usually in StarCraft, chess, whatever game, people will refer to someone as having the tempo, which pretty much means do they have the initiative, determining what's happening. But for this video, let's go over how I'm defining tempo. Tempo is how the rate or speed at which you are hitting your goals. Your goals being something get initiative. So it's generally going to be army. And it's going to be getting army or getting pigs. So getting army just immediately gives you initiative. That's the idea. Since I getting more army. Or if you're going to go get pigs, which are going to give you initiative later when the pig eco kicks in, then gives you army. Now, you are ahead on tempo when you are hitting your goals first. You are ahead on tempo when you get 16 farms first. You get 16 farms before the enemy gets 16 farms. Or you get your tier 3 before the enemy gets their tier 3. You are hitting your goals, the goals which are to get initiative. You're basically getting initiative first before the enemy. That is being ahead on tempo. You are behind on tempo when you are reaching those goals after an enemy does. So you're getting your 16 farms later than enemy does. So you're getting your tier 3 after they do. So when you're ahead on tempo, you get initiative. Initiative is when you determine how the match is being played, as in you are the one attacking. You have the option to attack or defend. An enemy has to respond accordingly. Like they can't move out on their own. So this basically means you're going to have more army or a stronger army. And like they can't move out and attack because they're just going to lose the fight. Instead they have to defend. They're reacting to where your army is going. So the stronger army generally has the initiative. Of course, there are exceptions, notably lizards and Kasha, because they can use their mobility to be threatening a flank. So if the enemy army has better positioning, or an army that has better positioning and better mobility, they can use that to have the initiative, since they can attack your base before you can hit back their base. So they can do damage while you won't be able to do damage because they're using their superior mobility to damage your base, your economy, etc. While you can't. And if you try to base raid, you're probably just going to lose. Of course, that's a very precarious scenario of initiative, because if the enemy messes up, if they have a smaller army, even though it's more mobile, if their army gets caught out, it's just gonna die. You just push it and win the game. Okay, so again, to reiterate on tempo. Tempo is basically the rate and speed at which you are hitting your goals. The goal is to gain initiative. So, army, like hitting tier 3 timings, or economy, like hitting economic timings, and doing it before the enemy does. So you're ahead in the game, as people would say. And how do defenses play into that if it's not a siege? Well, defenses defend and they accelerate your tempo. They accelerate the rate at which you are hitting goals. Now let's... So I was waiting for me to put down MDs. Now, defenses accelerate your tempo, but you also cede the initiative. Because defenses cannot attack the enemy and they cannot move. It is entirely up to the enemy if they want to attack into your defenses or not. You cannot force them to attack unless it's a contained situation or a siege situation where you're just destroying their base. But in this sort of defense, you're giving yourself a tempo advantage, but you are ceding the initiative. But because you're doing this, like, so MG is 60 food. 3 skills is also 60 food. I think 3 or 4 skills equals an MG, I can't remember. But you also have to account for the Warren. So in a straight up fight, defenses are always more cost, or not always, but depending on the compositions, but they're generally much more cost effective food wise in a fight because you don't have to spend on the Warren, you're spending on the firepower. So this that you do, so you basically have more money to spend. That's either going to be on a tier 3 or on farms. So while you're seeing an initiative, you're getting your farms first or a tier 3 first. So you're accelerating your tempo, because otherwise, without defenses, you wouldn't be able to do that. Just because you'd be too weak, the enemy will just run over you. If the armies are equal, or the match has been equal up to that point. Like if I put down the tier 3 right now, and I just put down more Lizard Warrens, he will just have a 180 food more army. But because the MGs are so cost effective, in this situation, it's very awkward to work around these. In this case, I'm actually going both Badger and Boar. Can't remember a specific reason for that, but that's besides the point. But basically, the MGs are letting me accelerate my tempo. They're letting me accelerate the rate at which I put down a tier 3 and get the tier 3 out relatively safely. Otherwise, if the enemy army knew about this, they could just kill me. In this case, this probably is too greedy, and they shouldn't be going these farms. But on what, just pretend it's 1 tier 3 here. And again, spamming out more MGs because they're so cost effective. And a straight up fight generally. So yeah, I'm accelerating, it's accelerating the tempo, and I keep on saying that. I have the Boar out. Now it's also important to explain that you can't put too much money in MGs. Like here, I'm still waiting for my Badger to come out. Because again, you're using this to accelerate tempo to hit a timing to get initiative tier 3, or you're trying to get a bunch of farms, in which case you get initiative slightly later when the eco kicks in. So like these defenses are not permanent. You're only keeping them up to accelerate your tempo to hit a certain goal that you have. Because if you just have defenses forever, you're never going to have the initiative. You just have too much defenses, you're never going to have the initiative. The idea here, again, is to hit goals like tier 3, economy, then you go into army, then you just win since you have more army. And yeah, the fight's over. Trying to think if there's any other good replays. Oh, let me look. I'm trying to think if I have one with Siege, but I don't really have any Siege games up right now. Actually, now let me go show this one. Okay, here's another game. where I use defenses. It's kind of blurred here between defense and siege, but it's siege in this case. And reiterate the two differences. So there's siege is when your army operates around the defenses and you don't want to fight without the defenses. But you're retreating to safety as defenses, but you're either using the defenses directly to destroy the enemy base, which is rarely. Usually only you put down artillery around by other defenses. But more often you usually have your army next to the defenses and you go harass the enemy army or base, then retreat back to the safety of your defenses whenever the enemy army tries to engage you. When you use your defenses for defense, you're using them to accelerate tempo. As in, you're using them to hit tier 3s first, get 16 farms first, hit whatever goals you have first. Goals that'll give you initiative, either right away, when you, in the case of units, since you just get the tier 3 out and you attack, or slightly later, when you get a bunch of economy, then you build the units, then you attack or whatever. And when you use defenses for defense, it's generally temporary, or at least you don't put too much in defense because if defenses are just in your base, again, they're not doing anything. Like if they're not sieging your opponent, they're worthless, and they have to be generally pretty far forward and aggressive to be sieging your opponent. Like if defenses are in your base, they're not actually doing anything. When you have defenses up or too much money in defenses, you are ceding the initiative to an enemy since they have superior army or they're going to have superior economy after a little bit. You're only using defenses so you can get more farms in that moment safely. Get a lot more farms in a moment safely, or get a tier 3 or tier 3s even in that moment safely. Whereas otherwise, without the defenses, you wouldn't be able to. Because defenses, again, are just generally more cost effective. Like, say, MG is equal to 3 skrills. But you don't have to build the skrill warren, so you can get 2 MGs for every 3 skrills the enemy has. So when you're using defenses for defending to accelerate your tempo and hit your goals, hit your timings, you're going to want to sell the defenses, generally. Really, the only exception is for flank defense. Like maybe you just have some barbed wire, some mines to scout and stop lizard harass or a fox or something. Yeah, you keep those up. Yeah, this is a little pushing. In this case, yeah, this wire here, this was for defense. It's letting me hit my it's so I can defend and hit my skunk timing. Although in this case he already has his chameleon, so I'm basically just I'm behind in tempo in that moment. Because he has his tech out first and I don't have any tech, so I'm trying to catch back up in tempo by equalizing the army strengths by also getting out tech. Now let's talk about all the units. So almost all defenses can be used for either siege or defense. The only exception is artillery, which is pretty much only a siege unit. Because you can't really use it to accelerate tempo generally, because it's 45 seconds to build and it's 180 food. So like, that's a tier 3 warren. Like just put down a tier 3 warren. Like it costs so much money and it takes so long to build that you're really not going to get any tempo advantage. Like the enemy can just go a bunch of farms in that time or something. They can do so many things. Generally, you cannot use artillery defensively. It just doesn't work out since it's too much time and too much money. So it's pretty much relegated to siege rules. But barbed wire can... And okay, see, in this case... Now, armies are actually equal. Well... Now, he has a better army composition, arguably. Wow, it's a really tough call. I'd say with proper micro, my army is definitely better. So I'm not really using this barbed wire. It's kind of blurry here, the lines. I'm kind of using it both to defend, but ultimately it's on the... it's really for siege here. And I'm sieging the... It's awkward, since I'm sieging in order to distract the enemy and give time for my boar to get out. But basically, like, this is a siege, since I'm operating outside and around the wire, then I retreat back to it, so he can't engage into me. Yeah, wire can be used both for siege and for defense. Like, for defense, you just throw it up to get your tier 2 out, your tier 3 out, your farms out, etc. It can also be used for siege, let's take a forward mill, start spamming forward wire at the choke point. Oh yeah, that's another type of siege. Like, again, like, this containing is a type of siege, because your enemy is going to have to attack you. Like, if it's a choke point map and you just contain them, they're going to starve out sooner or later, so. Mines are generally not used for siege, they're used for defense, but they're used for siege sometimes in a capacity that they're used to bait, you use your army, like with ferrets or whatever, to bait the enemy army into your mines when they go after your ferrets or whatever your army has. MGs are also used for both roles, be either used to defend and give you time to get out tier 3 or farms, or they can also be used in siege situations for you to safely retreat to. Although, as far as siege goes, I don't find them particularly useful outside of just direct contains. Because MGs are kind of weak to bore, ferret, etc. Sniper balloons are... It depends. I'd say ultimately they lean more on the line of siege. You always find sniper balloons in siege decks. Because they give lots of vision for ferrets, or owl, or artillery. And they're also useful for Kasha. They give vision to Kasha too. And they're good for defense. They're really strong in barbed wire. So you usually see them with siege. But funnily enough, they're also a counter siege unit. So you'll also see them the stop fox and stop ferret. And finally, but not least, is artillery, which I already explained, is just pretty much solely a siege unit. It's too much time and too much money to use as a defense. It costs so much resources, you're not really getting ahead in tempo if you're trying to use artillery to cover for tempo. Like, you're gonna put the artillery up, and so the enemies are they're gonna get 16 farms like a minute before you. And you can't sell your army until the artillery is up. It's 45 seconds is too long. Like with barbed wire, MGs and mines, like they go so up quickly, you can just sell your army after 10 seconds and go do the farms or the tier 3. That's another reason why Sniper Balloon tends to be on the line of siege, because 20 seconds and 120 food is still a lot of resources, and 20 seconds is still a long time, particularly on shorter maps. And yeah, just to reiterate, the two categories of defense are siege, especially when you're operating your army around fortifications to put pressure on the enemy base, or using fortifications directly, generally artillery, to strike the enemy base. If not that, you have your army close to fortifications and you move out and hit the enemy base, economy, or army. Then when the enemy army tries to engage you, retreat back to your fortifications. And you keep on repeating until you're so far ahead that you can just push in a win. Now, when you use them for defense, you're using them to accelerate tempo. Tempo being the rate or speed at which you accomplish your goals being to get initiative somehow. So you either get a tier 3 out quicker, or get 16 farms quicker, etc. And you can and it accelerates your tempo in the way that defenses are more cost effective, generally, than straight up units, like barring composition exceptions. Like, it's not going to be cost effective to put MGs up against ferrets. But generally, you can put the fortifications up, then sell off army, and then put down the tier 3, or the farms, or whatever. And then you hit your tempo, and your tempo's ahead, as in you're hitting your goals first before the enemy. Then you have initiative, because you have a stronger army. But when you're defending with defenses, you don't want to keep on making defenses, because you are ceding the initiative, because defenses only do anything if the enemy is attacking them. So you want to use them to hit a specific goal you have in mind. And you want to sell the defenses off and get more army or economy or something. Because when you're defending with defenses, the goal is entirely to hit certain, to get to initiative. Because you're well, how do I say it? Like when you're defending with defenses, you're trying to get out something that's going to give you the initiative. So you don't want to stay on the defenses. That's pointless. Anyway, that is the end of this video.